bang goes the chess goat, Magnus Carlsen. This is the position he had against Hikaru Nakamura, but let's rewind because it all kicked off in Titled Tuesday, the late event on the 10th of June. One of these guys went on to win the whole thing. This is truly epic chess. We'll have a look at El Clasico as Magnus kicks off with the English. He's the Norwegian and he's playing the American, who goes for a Sicilian with colours reversed. This is online chess. Magnus builds the banana hammock. Now we see knight f6 and this guy tucks into bed, so Hikaru plays this little pawn push, preparing to erect that big black centre, so Magnus fights back. Allowing takes, the queen comes streaming out. Usually you don't do it so early in the game, but the knight can't develop. Pawn stands in the way, so d5 for the high five. Kasparov runs in, gives Hikaru one. What a lucky guy. Magnus develops and Hikaru could carry on nice and steady. Then castle, but he plays bishop e6. Really quirky way of playing. Magnus just castles, says please eat that pawn. Hikaru says yes please, he's hungry. Both players so often are, and yes, he's won a pawn, but bang, few Magnus fans start bleating. He's the endgame GOAT, because we're in an endgame here, or is it a middle game? No one truly knows, and Magnus is renowned for grinding, squeezing his opponent's kahunas, and he starts here by scurrying forward with the knight. Now it hits the bishop, and if you try and move it anywhere, well, there's a threat to take here with check, of course. So this knight calmly develops. Magnus copies, hitting the pawn, preparing to take the bishop, win this one back. So Hikaru comes round like this, covers the pawn. Still we get takes with check, saddling Hikaru with a pawn structure that only a mother could love. But after knight f3, Magnus is the one who's got to prove it here, because he's a pawn down. How can he use this bishop bear to actually fight back against that? The knight's about to hop. If h6 to stop that, by the way, well, knight e5, and there's new weakened squares. So we get bishop c5 played. Excellent move. Preparing to converge with the rook on the half open file. Magnus now hops, going for the pawn, and apparently, according to the Silicon Overlord, rook e8 is the strongest defense. But king d7 was played. Magnus now intensifies the pressure. This cannon slides over to blast into that pawn's defense, but it allows check, and you can't run away with the king, or you crash through like this. That's not only a check, but a fork of the bishop, so you'd have to give the exchange. Not good. Therefore, after check, we see this move. It's knight b to d5. Now it covers the file, but are you not walking slap bang into pawn e4, winning a piece? No? Well, this is Hikaru's point. He plays pawn h6, saying fine, you eat me, I eat you.
Mushrooms.
And we're going to explore that in a moment. First, let me show you the best move, which is takes on e6. And because you're hitting the bishop and there's discoveries, black should actually do this. This is how the game goes, and white stands a bit better. You know, you can start undermining these pawns, something like this. You're going to win the exchange at your leisure. Okay, white stands better. But Magnus didn't take here. He missed that best move. He can't retreat, of course, or the knight simply eats here. This is covering, so he plays takes on d5. We do see a swap of the prisoners. Now Magnus can take with check. He's won back his pawn. The king has to go, and now he saves his bishop from that rook's attack. But I absolutely love how Hikaru plays this next part of the game. Now there's a threat to take the pawn there, but Hikaru ignores all of that, centralizes the knight, and he sets up these brilliant counterplay ideas down the f-file. The rook's on the way, plus there's these ideas to then pick up the pawn if the bishop's distracted, but still Magnus takes. It is actually the best move. He's eating one of those ones, preparing to one day push a pawn of his own. Rook hf8 hits the bishop and the pawn behind it, so you can't just casually move this bishop. Pawn g4 has to be played. What an exciting game. Big bishop seesaw there. Andreas spinning the beats. Everyone's having a great time. And g6 is excellent. Distracting the bishop. Magnus captures. Yes, you could crash through on f2 with check immediately, but it's not actually the strongest move. Amazingly, this is. Hikaru finds it. I mean, there's a reason that these are the top 2 blitz players in the entire world right now. They find these kind of continuations low on time. They're playing chess at the level that we'd play our classical chess. In fact, no, they're not. We are way below even their blitz chess in our classical. The rook now invades on the 2nd rank, and not only does it hit the pawn on f2, but also the pawn on b2. Now, this is the favourite move of stock Barnacle, but if you do this, you drop this pawn, and how dangerous does that one look? Running away like Forrest Gump. So Magnus didn't go for this. He actually went for rook d2, another one of the top lines. You x-ray defend the pawn in case of rook captures, but of course this can be played. Bishop takes on f2 with check. Now Magnus steps up into the firing line, but of course you can't play a discovered check, or the white rook simply takes that black rook. So takes was played. This bishop tucks back. Now bishop e3 is an excellent move. Hikaru's really turning that screw. If you capture, well, this guy's galloping in with check, and of course you're going to win the bishop and a pawn, and these ones start running 4-on-2 majority. So Magnus ducks back here, but now bishop d4. And you renew the threat of the knight jump, but also attack the pawn on b2. Such a difficult position. This is apparently the best move. Bishop f2 I was going to show, but not played by Magnus. He instead goes for a check. Now when the king goes, he plays rook e1. So he's saying take that pawn if you want to do so. Then I'm going to just start running these, go for the counterplay. This one at least covers the square for now. But Hikaru, absolutely correctly, does not take the pawn. He jumps forward, going to Forktown, population Magnus, and this is where we pick it up. Magnus smashes that guy off the board, and what he's saying now is look at those bishops. Of course he whispers, stack my bishop, one of his favourite lines, and he just simply wants to run the h-pawn, make a queen, and use their defensive power in the other direction. But this is excellent from Hikaru, highly astute, king c5. And it just shuts down all the fun. It's like bringing a fire extinguisher to a fire party. I'm not sure that makes sense. But the problem is that after king f3, the bishop's coming to d4, and you're forcibly exchanging these guys. And then Hikaru is going to get going himself. Now king f4 was played. If captures, then this is how the line goes. You can start running, but b5. And these ones are just much, much faster. Whoops, that's not the best move. King e5 apparently at this stage is better. Start running the king back. If h7, then you can go c3, or bring the king all the way back around. With no dark squared bishop, you can blockade on the dark squares. But okay, we did not see takes. Magnus steps in to cover like this. Now pawn b5, h4, b4, Magnus can crack on. Hikaru pushes, and again, if you push, then this is the line I had prepared earlier, just like Blue Peter, and you can't even take on c2. That one's pinned. So you're just not winning the race. So Magnus desperately tries this to pick up the bishop, attacked twice now, but rook e8. Pin and win, baby. That one can no longer take. It's about to drop off the board. Magnus here resigns the game because that one's gone. Where to step? This is apparently the top line. King takes, and you just start running this pawn right. Way too fast, and the bishop even covers the queening square. This is the final position. However, there's a twist. Because just because Hikaru won the game did not mean he won the tournament. These are the final results. Magnus Carlsen getting the job done, including with a big W over Hans Niemann. Do have a look at that game on screen now in case you missed it. Another absolute classic with a queen sacrifice. Hope you enjoyed, and see you soon. Cheers.